Anybody paying any attention to media over the last couple of days has certainly seen this picture plastered first, I believe, in the New York Times, and then seemingly plastered around really any single news outlet that's been covering the Israeli-Gaza war. And this has, of course, been highlighted as the terrible famine that Israel is inflicting on the Gazan citizens. Recent reporting has, of course, showed that this young boy or toddler suffers from cerebral palsy in what many are calling a blood libel against Jews. Now, something interesting about this, and this is, I think, where one has to take a step back and zoom out and just consider the ubiquity of anti-Semitism whenever talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is a artist's rendition of Michelangelo's famous painting of Mother Mary and Jesus. And this painting, of course, based on the Michelangelo sculpture, sort of gets at the two most pernicious anti-Semitic claims really throughout medieval and one can argue Jewish history as well. That is, of course, the idea of the blood libel, the idea that Jews kill innocent Christians for no reason and even have some ritual desire and purpose to kill Christian boys, oftentimes using their blood to make matzahs, and also the idea that the Jews killed Jesus, the idea of deicide, and that all Jews everywhere are responsible for this, murder of the Son of God, aka Jesus. These pictures, it's not a mistake that these evoke extremely similar imagery, which again just gets to the point that the entire reason why the world is obsessed with this situation going on in Israel and Gaza is because there's a deep anti-Semitism burned into the Western psyche. And in my mind, this is no different than a medieval blood libel. This is the reason why, for anybody paying attention, you don't hear anything about Sudan and Syria and Yemen and the millions of Uyghurs in concentration camps in China. I mean, when was the last time you saw a news report about what was happening in Sudan? Sudan is way deadlier than Gaza by virtually any number imaginable. This is also something that Hamas understands. Hamas is not stupid. Hamas has studied up on Western history and anti-Semitism and Jewish history. And this has been Hamas's plan from the outset in order to use the dominant anti-Semitic ethos of the West against Jews. One of the funny things that you get when you've been around and studying Israel for long enough, Israel, of course, pulls out of the Gaza Strip in 2005, and immediately after, Israel is charged with causing famine and lack of water in Gaza. And, anybody who was paying attention before October 7th, 2023, whenever Gaza would come up, it's an open-air prison and Israel starving the population. Now, all of a sudden, that October 7th happened and Israel's had to go into Gaza to systematically root out Hamas. All of a sudden, now everybody's talking about, oh, Gaza was this beautiful Gan Eden-like place before 2023, and Israel destroyed it, even though look how beautiful this area was. And so this is all just propaganda. And it's one of the reasons why anytime anybody gives a claim that is staunchly anti-Israel, it's not that it's necessarily ipso facto wrong, but it needs to be reflected and refracted through the lens of understanding the ubiquity of anti-Semitism. I am sure, and this is an example I've given time and time again, that within the medieval Jewish community, there were Jews who did bad things to Christians. I have no doubt about that. But that doesn't mean every time that a blood libel pops up in England or France or Germany or Damascus, it doesn't mean that people should say, well, there was that one Jewish guy that did something wrong to a Christian, 30 years ago, so maybe we should take this claim seriously. This is essentially the feeling that and I would argue you should also have towards a lot of these claims. The only honest answer, and, I've probably gotten 20 people asking me in the last couple of days, what is the situation going on with Gaza? Is there really a famine? All of that. The only honest answer, as I believe Mati Friedman just wrote in a op-ed recently, is I don't know. I have no idea. And the reason why I have no idea is because you have a Hamas-run Gaza who has been crying wolf for the last 20-ish years and blaming every single thing under the sun on Israel. Disease, famine, poverty, all of these things. But Gaza has been one of the most well-funded international areas in the last 10 years per capita. These are all public records. You can go right now and you can look up how much money the Palestinian people have gotten from international groups. Now, of course, Hamas takes all that money and uses that to enhance their tunnel system and their rocket system. Construction is very expensive for anybody who's ever tried to do a remodel or gotten estimates on their house or an apartment for even just fixing one wall. You know how expensive it is. Think about creating a massive tunnel system around your entire and under your entire area of the Gaza Strip. That costs tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. And Hamas has funneled all of that money into launching Gaza into becoming really just a war zone, a terrorist war zone against Israel. Not to mention that whenever the international media cites the Gaza Health Ministry, that's just Hamas. The Gaza Health Ministry is made up of a bunch of terrorists. It doesn't mean that they are ipso facto always wrong, but it just means it's not equal claims when the Gaza Health Ministry says one thing and Israel, again, which is a democracy that has freedom of press, says something else. So is there a famine? Listen, there might be a famine, and it really, really sucks for every innocent man, woman, child in Gaza who really just wants this war to end, who hates Hamas, who really just wants to, again, get on with some semblance of a normal life. And we should all be thinking about them. We should all be trying to figure out what is actually the best way to work through all the both anti-Semitism and just, awful bureaucracy of institutions like the UN, who have, of course, done nothing but pour fuel on the fire over the last couple of years. But it's certainly not Israel's fault, right? This is all the fault of Hamas just digging in deeper and deeper, understanding that this was going to happen, and actually applauding behind closed doors the fact that this is happening, that now, again, there's another blood libel against the Jews that's just spread everywhere on media and social media. And of course, this is not good for the Palestinian people either. This is just going to keep the war going for more and more time, because now there's going to be more international money in and more crocodile tears of the sort of, liberals of the world and everything like that. So don't be mistaken. This is certainly not Israel's fault by any stretch of the imagination. Not to mention just the obvious point that's always missed. Hamas could end the war at any second if they just release the hostages. And so the famine is really a war and a media technique by Hamas. And Hamas is loving that there are these pictures. And organizations like the New York Times, who somehow are publishing photos like this of the famine when they don't even do basic fact checking that this person has cerebral palsy, they are, again, responsible for what we can only imagine is akin to a medieval blood libel. So be critical of anyone coming at staunch criticism of Israel. Again, it doesn't mean that it's always wrong. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't be listened to and processed, but you have to understand that we are essentially swimming in a sea of anti-Semitism that's been burned deep into the psyche of not just the Western world, but also the Islamic world, that's also crept into the Western liberal world and progressive culture. And anytime somebody comes at you with claims like this, just imagine you are in, Norwich, England, which is the, original town of the blood libel in the 1100s. And this is almost the exact same thing. Again, the only difference, and I like to end all these videos by highlighting, back in the medieval ages when Jews were accused of blood libel, we had no power, right? Jews had no institutional power. Today we have the state of Israel. And so again, it is a strong imperative among really all Jews, and I would argue even beyond Jews, anybody who cares about that basic human dignity, to stand up for a strong Israel, to ensure that the IDF is stronger than ever. Because in the Middle Ages, when there was a blood libel, this would result in Jewish communities being decimated, burned, women raped. And now when there's a blood libel, we have the IDF, thank God, to be there and protect us.